new technology in a law enforcement environment where, as a police officer, if I say something which is not wholly accurate, I might end up being prosecuted myself. So I don't want to be there. So I'm going to be a very risk-averse person, and that slows everything down and stops all this sharing and new developments very quickly.
It was so very lucid and it's so heartening to see so many things common between UK police and us. We are at the receiving end, and it is said if there is a trophy for the most thankless job on the planet, it is that of a police officer. Right across, so be it, but we have a different attitude. We are extremely courteous to a fault to the media. But if at the end of the media as usual continues to be dissatisfied, which they always are, my only one-liner would be, look, we will do what we have to do, with you, without you, and in spite of you. It is for you to choose a path for yourself. We have already charted a path for ourselves. With malice towards none and firmness in the right. I know I cannot please everyone. I'm not in a popularity contest. But the use of technology, to your question, yes, we have the PPP model. The criminals today are so IT savvy that their generation, a software introduced in teaching on New York, is with the underworld the next day in less than 24 hours. We are a generation behind them, and for that we have wonderful industrial houses, people like the Veracity helping us out that this is the way. Knowledge is instant global advantage. As I said before, no longer do we have Kallu, Nanne, Bhonu, Pappus. We have highly articulate, educated, those educated in the best of institutions, they have taken to criminality. And they know how to handle IT, especially when it comes to things like cybercrime, e-footprints, e-surveillance. We have to depend upon the experts like Veracity and others, how best to, and I think it is something worth pursuing, that today it is not just billions and billions of e-surveillance methodology that needs to be incorporated in standard operating procedures. I'll give you a very small example of China. China has a base number of 950 for every citizen. If you score below 750, artificial intelligence, you go to any traffic light, I go, you go, they will give you a score immediately. The control room is monitoring everyone. And if the score goes below 750, somebody will come to the hotel to serve there's interrogation in the next police station. Whether it's their citizen, they have made a surveillance, my car, my credit cards, my e-behavior, my e-conduct, my criminal history, my health, everything is there with the big brother. And if my score is less than 750, I'm constantly on their radar. If not, I would not like to have anything of that sort, but certainly on the ground surveillance, actual surveillance, it has to be doubled up so that in public interest, in the interest of law and order, whatever we can do, we have miles to go before we sleep. And I'm sure Veracity and other such high achievers can be of great help when it comes to developing the smart cities, smart policing in the country.
Quite a lot of involvement with European Union projects as well. The European Union has got an overarching strategy to raise the level of security across the whole of the Union, 28 countries, so that wherever an EU citizen travels, they can enjoy the same level of safety and security as any other country or their home country. And to that end, they fund projects that they invite private companies to participate in, that they get paid to develop these projects. And I was in one which finished last year. The police are a data-rich organisation. We are inundated with data. But trying to make sense of that data is extremely challenging. We have lots of disparate systems, they don't talk to each other, they've all grown up piecemeal rather than something integrated. And about 5 years ago, the European Union issued a call to tender for some hardware and software that would integrate police systems and analyse it and give you answers at the end of that analysis. So it takes a year for a group of companies to get together and put together a proposal that goes to the European Union. They have to go in by the end of August of that year. Then in January of the following year, you'll know whether you were successful or not. Then there'll be a negotiation, so you'll start middle of that next year. So already, from the time the tender comes out, you're 2 years down the road. Now, 2 years in IT is a lifetime. So then the EU is how do they streamline this process so that they can speed up the procurement of technology. And public sector funding streams, they're all worked out 2 or 3 years in advance. Capital expenditure is tiny. I don't know about in India, but in policing terms in the UK, about 87% of the police budget is staff costs, and 13% of that budget can go towards capital expenditure. But then you've got to buy police vehicles, you've got to maintain buildings, you've got to buy technology and things like that. So at the end of the day, you're talking about very small sums of money that you have available, unless you want to have an unlimited pot of money, which we all know governments don't have.
With Mr. Steve's permission, Anirudh, we are a vast country, and what happens in Kerala does not happen in UP, and what happens in UP does not happen in Kashmir. So they cannot be cut and dried solutions to anything. But yes, the best international practices, customized for Indian use, constant improvement, constant innovation. You see the changes that have happened to the police. 1861, we had the Police Act, no changes, nothing till as late as 1990. And today, if you would say, if there is a police station that does not have an internet, that does not have electricity, that does not have a dedicated courier system, that does not have IT experts, then you are woefully behind the times. But this is exactly how almost every police station in the country functioned till even as late as 2010. It is now that we are fast learners, we have improvised, we are getting the best international practices, and to give you a small, we are not using it, but we are aware of it. We are aware, we are not using it, don't make any mistake. A neighboring country has what is known as a Bluefish A3 drone. Bluefish A3 drone. It is customized, it has the facial recognition software. It also has the capacity of mortar and light machine gun. It also has a small charge of explosives. And if somebody decides, because our Western neighbors seem to have that, and if they choose to give my photograph and feed it and upload it on that Bluefish A3 drone, well, that is programmed only to destroy. So you have to cater to that contingency. Nuclear choice is a thing of the past. Nuclear deterrence is very much there, but see the technology and where IT has taken to crime and criminality, that is where the problem arises. You have to think ahead, plan ahead, improvise ahead through the public-private partnership. If you think that the police can do it singly, it is just not possible. It is just not possible. Because whatever I learned today, even if it is the best of educational institutions, it will be obsolete in just 6 months.
Interesting question to answer, really, because law enforcement will always be behind the curve, as we both sort of said already about this in terms of technology, because we're always chasing. And if you look at the environment we're operating in more and more now, particularly in the UK, for example, is more and more crime now is online. You know, the days of the robbers wearing a mask and running into a bank with a gun, or maybe not, with a stick and holding up the bank, those days are gone now, really, because it's too high a risk for the robber. It's far easier for them to sit at home on the computer, because there's plenty of gullible people out there that will get sucked in by these schemes. And frankly, the police don't have the skills to deal with this nowadays. And I think that increasingly what you'll see is this bigger partnership between forensic accountants and IT people who have got those abilities that can prepare the evidence and gather all that information that the law enforcement people need, and then the law enforcement will actually make the arrests and detain the people concerned, but using evidence supplied by other agencies. The problem as well now, though, is that crime is not really in one country. You know, it's cross-border, and when you've got things like the European Union that don't really have borders anymore, you can, once you get into one European Union country, you can go around the whole of the EU not being stopped by anyone at all. And the criminals know that, whereas the police have to stop at the border because they have no jurisdiction to go beyond. And frankly, as an organisation, we're not that sophisticated enough yet, and we don't have the skill base to deal with a lot of these problems that are emerging. Will we ever get there? Frankly, I don't know the answer to that, because, as I said earlier, we are quite risk-averse organisations because of the repercussions on individuals if things go wrong. So people tend to follow the line of least resistance to keep themselves on an even keel. I hope that makes sense.
Now I need a hour of attention, serious attention, and what would like to suggest for the police reforms in India currently?
Rakesh ji, your question is sending coal to Newcastle. You should be able to answer your question better. We have Mr. Malhotra, Mr. Pandey. 1996, Prakash Singh and N.K. Singh filed a writ petition in the Supreme Court. After 10 years, 2006, the judgment comes. 7 points directed to the Supreme Court. And after 2006, we are into 2023. 2 serving Chief Justices have said, what can I do when the Chief Ministers are not cooperating with us? The other Chief Justice says, police reforms seem to be going on and on. But now I'll tell you the ground reality. I am in the same society where you live. I asked many politicians. This Supreme Court judgment is the law of the land, Rakesh ji. Why can't it be enforced? The Supreme Court is all powerful. And if you do it, you will become immortal for all times to come. Mr. Singh, you are way off the mark. Our entire politics is run on the basis of this rotten system of policing. Our politics is not on the basis of integrity and probity. It is on the basis of who can lodge an FIR, who can expunge the FIR, who can make an accused, who can remove the person from the accused to innocent. That is how the politics is run. If we were to get the police reforms, you will find the selling vegetable on the crossing. We will have to leave politics.
I know it's probably directed at my colleague here, but I can talk a little bit about the UK because we have a big drugs problem in the UK as well amongst young people. And how do you stop this? Well, I'm not sure there is an answer, frankly. I think a lot of it starts with parenting, trying to come up with other diversionary tactics to stop young people getting involved with drugs. But it's very well organised, the drug trade now in the UK, with gangs from around Europe that are importing drugs. And they come with a lot of violence as well. And the more open your society is, the easier it is for these people to get some traction in your country, to sell drugs. Young people get sucked into it. I think certainly from the UK side, there seems to be a general dumbing down of a lot of the young people, and there's a growing gap between sort of the haves and the have-nots, if you like. And I think you see that in other places like the US as well, where young people seem to be becoming less able, and that's quite a sweeping statement because I think you have some that are very bright and very go-ahead, but it seems to be there's a growing underclass of people that use drugs as a substitute for life, I'm guessing. And frankly, I don't know what the answer is. We've been fighting, people don't like to say it's a war, but we've been fighting a war against drugs since before I joined the police back in the 70s, and it's no better. And to some extent, we always used to say when I was in the police, if you don't have a drug squad, you don't have a drug problem, because it's all hidden, because nobody bothers about it. And it's only when you set up a drug squad that all of a sudden you have a drugs problem. But of course, people need to steal to get money to buy drugs. So if you focus on that activity, but sometimes the police get more and more sidelined, certainly in the UK, with hate crime, things going on social media, that, I've been offended, so I want you to do something about it. And somehow, as an old cop, we seem to have lost our way a little bit with regards to enforcing the rule of law.
Thank you. With your permission, I'll just give you two sentences about the Indian context. The NDPS Act and the PITS NDPS are by far the most strict and stringent regulations in the country. There are provisions of death penalty and also confiscation of immovable property. Have you ever heard of a single case where a death penalty has been given, property confiscated? You have to be cruel to be kind. You see the case of Riya Chakravarti and Sushant Rajput and Shah Rukh Khan's son, much ado about nothing, and then everything is the deep freeze. There has to be something that if you make an arrest, take pains to ensure that there's conviction. And if there's no conviction, then wrongful restraint and confinement, they have to be charges against the law enforcement agencies. Now the drugs lead to other petty crime, to your question. A lady executive, the top editor of a TV channel, goes home every day and she is stalked by a drug addict on a regular basis. The police look the other way for whatever reasons, and no drug sale is possible without the passive or active connivance of the law enforcement. Don't live in an illusion, anybody. Now that person is accosted and he says, yes, I do drugs, and then I have very friendly relations with you know whom. And then he is told, given in a no nonsense clear term, that this is the last time you are stalking anyone. You will not be seen on this road now. Obviously, the law has taken its consequences and you never see it. But to your question, is there a complicity? I would say that there is, yes. For small peddlers, we have the rickshawalas and petty pedestrians, we catch them. But the drug war, not a single case in the last 20 years.